This is the PS5.
The successor to the PS4 is finally here. Now, the previous PlayStation was simply an amazing console. The console where many third-party games shined on, and also boasted a variety of high-quality first-party exclusives, which truly defined the previous console generation. Yeah, the PS4 console was an outstanding success, which was great for Sony. Although the platform set the standard extremely high, there was definitely room for improvement. Hence, bring on the PS5. Now, before we begin, if you'd like to see the unboxing and the box contents of this PS5 console, I will leave a link in the video description down below, or you can simply go over to my YouTube page and check it out after this video. So here it is, this is the PS5, and instead of it being a lazy copy of the PS4 console, Sony really went the extra mile to differentiate the new PlayStation from the previous one in many ways, making this feel like a true next generation experience. Yep, this is exactly the PS5 design, extremely different to the PS4. It's bold, really stands out, it has a very unique look, and looks more like a futuristic device than a traditional console, which I quite rather like. The design is eye-catching, and I'm glad that Sony decided to really give the new PlayStation a refreshing design. Compared to any other console, it's an absolute giant, easily the biggest ever. 39cm tall, 26cm deep and 10cm wide. So you will need to keep this in mind, especially if you're thinking about buying this PS5, as you may need to change up your entertainment centre, as if you lay this PlayStation 5 flat, it may not fit your existing one. Definitely make sure to have enough space, as it's way larger than many people will expect. But despite it being huge in size, it still manages to remain relatively quiet for the most part, which is an improvement after the infamously loud PS4. On the front of the console, there is an Ultra HD Blu-ray optical drive. There is a high-speed USB Type-A port to enable charging of those new DualSense controllers. And yes, we've got a super speed USB Type-C port, which is a pleasant upgrade that was certainly needed. Shifting to the back, we have a power connection port. There's a HDMI port, which supports HDMI 2.1 connection. Again, we've got two super speed USB Type-A ports and one Ethernet port. In order for the PS5 console to stand up vertical or lie flat horizontal, it requires the stand which is featured with the console to be used so it can remain stable. So, as you can tell, with this PS5, it really does stand out between all the PlayStation consoles and has very different design ideas than the previous ones. This also applies to the new DualSense controller. The transition from the older DualShock 4 to the new DualSense really shows off the next generation leap with the newly implemented features and technology within the controller. Firstly, it's sleek and maintains the PlayStation 5 console colours and aesthetic. The design stirs away from the traditional all-black controller that has been around since the PlayStation 2, and this time it goes for the black and white finish. The buttons are kept mostly the same. The previous share button is now the Create button, which captures screenshots and gameplay at up to 4K resolution. The controller is noticeably more bulkier. It includes a lot of grip, more sturdy, and personally I feel like it's more comfortable within my hands, though it may not be the same for everyone. Sony does address the complaints about the previous PlayStation 4 controller and fixes them with this brand new one. Battery life does last over 10.5 hours, but if you do use the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers, you will indeed get a shorter battery life. Yep, the size has been increased to better fit people's hands, and charging is much faster due to using that USB Type-C. However, the standout part about this controller, which really showcases the big difference between the old and the new, is the mentioned enhanced haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers. Astro's Playroom is a game that utilises the new technology in the DualSense and is a great demo to get a feel of the new controller and show it off. When Astro draws a bow and arrow, you really feel the tension in the triggers grow as you hold them down. The vibrations and resistance in the triggers when shooting a Gatling gun really immerses you and keeps you more engaged in the gameplay. In the new Spider-Man game, haptic feedback is featured, but it's much more subtle and not as intense as what you'll find in Astro's Playroom. PS4 games like the God of War or The Last of Us Part 2 also supports the new features of the controller. Every shot you fire with a weapon in Naughty Dog's game results in impressive controller feedback, something that's also felt in God of War's combat, especially when throwing the Leviathan axe. The DualSense is generally an improvement all around and unlike any controller I've seen before. Using this DualSense is a pleasant experience and I'm excited to play with it a bit more. Hopefully, video game developers do utilise the tech in this new controller, as it has the potential to create immersive experiences to enhance gameplay in ways you wouldn't ever expected. Booting up the console, the initial setup is simple. You are able to log into your PSN account and you are also given the option to transfer your PS4 data to the PS5. Straight off the bat, the new UI retains some similarities with the PS4 UI, however it still manages to feel different and definitely an evolution of the last gen. The user interface keeps the line of games set up previously seen on the PS4. However, now the game icons are now much smaller, giving the home screen a more minimal look. The backgrounds that are applied for each game is a very nice feature indeed, offering more variety in looks, making that home screen more dynamic. Up to 9 installed games stand in a line on the home page, and at the very end is a library, which reveals all your games. This is basically the same as the PS4. You can go through the library by platforms, so you can easily tell which games are on which console. It is simple and streamlined. The user interface, I must admit, is easy to navigate, and you can quickly access the control center with one tap of the PS button on the controller. The control sensor is one of the new additions to the PlayStation user experience. The sensor serves as a way of having immediate access to almost everything without leaving a game, such as viewing who is online, jumping straight into game activities, missions, checking the status of downloads, managing the controller, managing power, tracking game progress, checking your trophies, and much more. I will go into more detail about these features within a future video. With a big 10.28 teraflops of power, the PS5 is much more capable than its predecessor. The boost in specs allows this PS5 to perform better and run up to native 4K with frame rates as high as 120 frames per second, and yes, also supports 8K resolution too. For example, Spider-Man is a great showcase of the PS5's power and stunning graphics. The PS5 can afford to run high-speed open-world games like Spider-Man Miles Morales in high fidelity mode at 4K with retracing enabled at 30 frames per second, or even performance mode at dynamic 4K with retracing disabled at 60 frames per second. Both modes are certainly very impressive, with ray tracing enabled. Catching those ray tracing reflections of the world and the beautiful realistic lighting creates eye-catching sights and images, making you want to stop within the game just to admire things like the city landscapes and even the reflection in puddles. And I'm sure it will only improve in other future games. But playing at 60 frames per second with 4K without having to sacrifice resolution is almost just as equally exciting as fidelity mode. This is most definitely an upgrade from the PS4 Pro, as most games forced you to sacrifice resolution to increase performance, or the other way around. And whilst it's still similar in some ways, it doesn't feel like you're losing out on too much when in either mode, as both modes have their own unique features and are both capable of maintaining 4K resolution, which really makes the new PlayStation feel like a true next generation console. And I think that Spider-Man, despite it being a cross-gen game, it looks very impressive and shows that developers are just right now scratching at the surface with what this PS5 can do. So yes, we are yet to see a game that is pushing the PS5 to its limits, which is quite mind-blowing really, considering how Spider-Man right now looks on this console. Overall, the PS5's graphics are beautiful, and as time progresses, graphics will become more realistic. Expect many third-party developers to utilise the abilities of this console, with some games supporting up to 120 frames per second, which shows a big improvement from the PS4 to PS5. In addition, upgrading to a 4K display is very important to really appreciate and take advantage of the PS5 features. The power and graphical capabilities, though amazing, isn't the standout part about the console. Really, it's the custom-made SSD, which is able to read up to 5.5 gigabytes a second of raw data. This is extremely fast, making loading screens almost non-existent. Once again, Spider-Man. Well, it can be used as a test for the speed. From the home screen to the menu, it takes only 4 seconds literally. And from the menu to the gameplay, it only takes 2 seconds. And also, the game is able to allow instant fast travelling. The SSD doesn't just improve loading screens, the control center also uses super fast loading. In some ways, for example, pulling up the control center whilst in a game is real quick. It will bring up different missions and activities, and when selecting a challenge, a mission, or whatever you choose, loading is instant and you can begin right away within seconds. You can also access help videos through that control center, for example, when struggling with certain parts within a game. But this all depends on if the game developers choose to support this with their games or not. With games like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart allowing players to jump between action-packed worlds and beyond the mind-blowing speeds, you can already see how developers can utilise this SSD in unique ways and the super fast instant loading to their advantage, as already seen with Spider-Man and that upcoming Ratchet & Clank game. The only downside is the SSD's low storage. After updates, you're left with around 667GB of storage left, so you've got to manage storage wisely, I'm afraid. Now, we've showcased some of the next gen gameplay, but how about we talk about backwards compatibility of the new console? Yes, that's right, 99% of PS4 games are indeed playable on this new PS5 console. So almost all will be playable, but some games may not behave like they did on that previous PS4. Some of them will have transferable saves from the last gen, but it's up to the developers whether they choose to allow their games to do this. At launch, certain last gen games will receive game boosts on the PS5. However, not all studios allow upgrades for free. For example, the PS4 version of Control will work on the PS5 via the backwards compatibility, but only the new Ultimate Edition version of Control will get a PS5 makeover and improvements at some point next year. This is also the same with Spider-Man PS4. It's playable on a PS5, but only Spider-Man Remastered will receive upgrades on the PS5. PlayStation exclusive games like God of War gets boosts and will now be able to run up to 60 frames per second if you choose favourite performance mode. And games like Days Gone is now able to run at dynamic 4K 60 frames per second. You can immediately tell the difference in detail and graphics is great and allows for smoother gaming experience. Ghost of Tsushima will also support 60 frames per second with faster load times, and whilst PS4 games on the PS5 don't get close to the PS5 game load times, they are shaved down somewhat by a good margin, which in the end is an overall improvement. These are just a few games receiving boosts, and do expect more PlayStation 4 games to receive updates to take advantage of the PS5's power. Overall, when playing the previous console's catalogue of games, I noticed mostly improvements all around, with games looking a lot more crisp, plus with higher frame rates. But I must admit, I'm slightly disappointed that not all games will receive improvements from the PS5. Please note that you can plug in an external hard drive into the PS5 and store those old PS4 games onto it, so to keep the internal SSD storage from quickly filling up. This is probably a good idea, as the PS5 only comes with 667GB of storage and is yet to support storage expansions. The only downside is the PS4 games won't benefit from faster loading times when stored on a hard drive. And even though those PS4 games can be stored on an external hard drive plugged in, PS5 games can't be stored, I'm afraid. Once again, expect more info about this in more in-depth videos in the near future. Now, after hearing all about this backwards compatibility with the PS5, you may be thinking your old PS4 console is pretty much useless. However, hold on to it just for now. I say this because, surprisingly, you can now play PlayStation 5 games with a DualShock 4 controller on a PS4. Yes, it's true, and that is via the remote play option. That has only just been added to the PS4 consoles, so you can use your PS4 to connect to and control your PS5 from another room. So this option allows you to switch between 520p, 720p standard, and 1080p resolution streaming. To use remote play, you have to enable it on your PS5 console you're connecting to first. On your PS5, go to Settings, go to System, then select Remote Play and turn on Enable Remote Play. Simple as that, really. Additionally, the PS5 comes loaded with accessibility options. so the console can be played by a wider audience, making this PS5 console much more accessible to almost everyone. Now, are you fed up with having to adjust your settings when you launch a new game? Yeah? Well, the good news is that this PS5 has in-game presets, which allows you to preset your own settings so that every game loads with your preferred options. So once you set most of your games up, the PS5 console will remember it and load your preferred visual options. Fantastic. In conclusion, the brand new PS5 console obviously isn't quite at its best yet, but it does begin with a very strong start with its launch lineup. Backwards compatibility, console power, 4K 120Hz support, and upcoming exclusives, all being major selling points and attractions of the PS5, especially the games. Now I'm looking forward to making future videos with this console real soon, and over the next few years in fact, and it's going to be exciting to see how it holds up. If I was to rate this PS5 console out of my usual rating out of 10, then right now, at launch time, for me, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. But yeah guys, that's it. PlayStation 5 console's here, it's unboxed, and we're going to get to smashing some games. So guys, if this video was useful today, please go ahead and support this channel by liking this video today. Remember to subscribe just now, making sure to hit that bell notification option so you guys stay updated on all my new uploads. Now I hope to be doing some more future videos, especially with this PS5 this week, and a few more tech reviews, so stay tuned for them. And as usual guys, make sure you all stay safe. If you've got a PS5, enjoy your games, and thanks for watching. Peace!